Oh, and I know what their names are because what they said, after they moved their
All
organization.
right, everybody. We're gonna go ahead and get started. We do still have people coming in, but we'll make room for everybody if need be. We'll open this garage door and extend out. So I want to welcome you to the first what we call Transportation Advisory Committee meeting. We are rewriting the Coordinated Transportation Plan. My name is Sharon Pearson, and I am the Lorain County Mobility Manager. You may not have heard that before. Some of you have, but my job is to improve transportation options for everyone in Lorain County with resources that are available, and as long as there's cooperation in order to do that. So first, before I introduce Ryan, I just want to say thank you to the Nord Family Foundation. They are the ones who are supporting the food for all the meetings that we're going to be having, and also the transportation that we tried to provide this morning with the help of Kendall at Oberlin, but a couple of people canceled at the last minute. And we were using Kendall at Oberlin because they are one of the 5310 recipients, and you'll learn a little bit more about that from here pretty soon. So I want to let you know we are recording this meeting, and if you've registered, we're going to make sure you get a copy of this, just in case there's something that you're like, okay, I remember they said something, but what did they say? So we are recording this meeting and all the other meetings. So this is going to be one of a total of 4 meetings that we're having. So to get the meeting started, I'd like to introduce Ryan Baroni.
Hey, Sharon. Unless folks feel free to come on in. There's a couple of spots I see open, at least one there, and then along the sides there's some chairs as well. So I just want to say a quick welcome. My name is Ryan Aroni. I'm the president and CEO here at United Way of Greater Lorain County. We really appreciate your help on this really important project. Thanks to Sharon for leading this. And I'll just do a quick pitch for this space. This is our community space. It's open, it's free. If you ever need a place to hold a community meeting or have space for your teams, please give us a call. We'd love to have you here. It's a flexible space. We can actually open this garage door too and make it a little bigger if needed. So again, just a quick thanks. Appreciate you being here, and I'll let you get to work.
Right. So just so that you know what you're getting yourself into today, I kind of have an agenda. I'm not going to be doing introductions because we're probably going to be taking up all the time in the meeting today, mostly since ODOT is here talking about mobility management and the FTA 5310 vehicle program. Then we are going to have Sarah Mason, who is the intern here for Lorain County Mobility Management, talk about past survey results. This is all laying the foundation to understand what needs we have here in the community. I'm going to talk about our current goals and also about the rewrite schedule, but what have we accomplished in 2022? And then I would like your participation. It's all going to be anonymous if you want to, using your phones, using a program called Menti. You're going to go ahead and sign on, put in a code, and answer some questions. It's really good information for us as we move forward with this rewrite. Before we get started, though, I wanted to lay the foundation about the fact that the United States has a problem with transportation. It's not just a problem necessarily in Lorain County only. And some of you have seen this video, some of you may not. But I want to share this because I thought it was a good way to really begin talking about why are we even doing this in Lorain County. So it's about, the video is what I called it is why is public transit so bad in the US?
This is Scotland. They have a similar number of inhabitants, a similar size, and a similar population. But here's Indiana's public transportation system, and here's Scotland's. You want to get to Cooper, a town of 9,030 miles from the capital. That'll take you 55 minutes on a train that leaves every 30 minutes, or an hour and 40 minutes on a bus that leaves every 40. You want to get to Anderson, a town of 50,030 miles from Indiana's capital. Well, you're out of luck. The only option is the car. Antiquated technology, safety concerns, crumbling infrastructure, and non-existence. It's not hard to argue that the US public transportation network is just not good. Vast swaths of the US have no option but to drive because the alternative just is not there. This has consequences on the environment, on economic mobility, and where people live. The consequences of America's lack of solid public transportation almost defines American culture. But it wasn't always like this. The United States once had the best public transportation system in the world. It was the admiration of countries worldwide and an essential factor allowing for the successful Western expansion of the country. It all started with this, the horse car. Now, there were urban transportation systems before these horse-drawn trams came along, but they weren't cheap and they weren't fast. Roads generally weren't paved, and there just wasn't the economic demand for high-frequency service because these carriages were rarely faster than walking. But on rails, these horse cars were fast, and one horse could pull a full load of passengers thanks to the rails. In its heyday, there were over 6,000 miles of horse car lines in the US. In comparison, the combined mileage of every tram, subway, light rail, and commuter rail system in the US nowadays is 5,416. In 1880, 50 million people lived in the US. Today, over 320 million. Around the turn of the century, many of those horse car systems were electrified. There were then 11,000 miles of streetcar track nationwide. The systems were absolutely everywhere. Even tiny towns like Bangor, Maine and Berlin, New Hampshire had streetcars. So what happened? How did the US go from having 11,000 miles of streetcar to 200? How did the US go from having solid public transportation in towns big and small across the country to how it is today? The decline of the streetcar began just after the turn of the century. That was when the automobile came around. By 1920, the car was starting to get to an attainable price point for the everyday individual. That was the real threat for the streetcar. Not cars, but economical cars. The streetcar received another blow in 1929, the Great Depression. There were fewer people with jobs, which meant fewer people who needed to commute, and fewer people who had the money to pay for transport. So many lines were just not profitable anymore and closed. But then the streetcar received a stay of execution, World War II. You see, during World War II, the US had the lowest unemployment rate in history, as low as 1.2%. There were tons of factory jobs to support the war, so practically everyone who wanted a job had a job. That meant that there were tons more people now going to and from work, and even better for the streetcar, there were rations going on rubber and gas, which diminished the popularity of the car. But something else was going on through all that, something more sinister. Sometime in the 1920s, automobile technology became advanced enough that the bus became cheaper to operate than the streetcar. Streetcars cost very little to power, but they do require a lot of infrastructure from overhead lines to track. Buses were more flexible and required almost no infrastructure, and the bus had some powerful friends, the automobile companies, or more specifically, General Motors. General Motors went and bought dozens of small streetcar companies across the nation and turned them into bus companies. They removed hundreds of miles of track across the US and supported other companies doing the same. But it's not like they didn't have a good reason to do this. These streetcars were not economically advantageous. Buses were faster, cheaper, and at the time, they were the modern and fresh transportation method that the public wanted. Nearly every streetcar system nationwide was replaced with a bus system. In addition, the streetcar companies were almost all commercial. So if and when they failed, many local governments set up public subsidized bus companies. So that's how transportation got bad, but why did it stay bad? Well, mostly because of the car. America is the country of the car. It grew up as the car grew up, so its cities were built from cars. Think Dallas, Phoenix, Los Angeles. You can't survive in these cities without a car. Remember, the United States is centered around the idea of personal freedom. With a car, you can go anywhere at any time. So politically, cars have historically been associated with the idea of personal freedom. Cities are just of a size where they literally cannot support their entire population driving. Can't fit more road infrastructure in many cities, but you can fit more public transportation. Cars were available to the common American much earlier than the common European. So the US set road policies early that allowed for large, smooth, and well-functioning roads. While the US was building its magnificent roads, Europe was building their public transportation systems. The high car usage in the US even has to do with zoning. See, European cities tend to have less strict zoning laws which allow for businesses and housing to intermingle. The US zones its cities much more strictly. Houses are next to houses and businesses are next to businesses, which means that the distance between houses and shops in the US is much greater. Therefore, Americans have to go further more often. The most demonstrative fact is how the two places approach parking. In the US, zoning laws specify a minimum number of parking spaces per building. In Europe, the laws specify a maximum number of parking spaces. The three cities with the three lowest car ownership rates in the US all have something in common. Boston, New York, and DC are all old, rather compact cities with decent public transportation systems. Since they were cities before the car, they're built much more like the European cities that have such good public transportation systems today. Simplified, public transportation gets worse as you go further west, since Western cities are newer. But here's the most important sentence of this entire video. Access to transportation is the single most important factor in an individual's ability to escape poverty. That is not a subjective claim, that is a fact that emerged from a Harvard study. Someone who lives right by a subway stop is astronomically more likely to find a job than someone who doesn't have a way to get around. Individuals in poverty generally live in poor neighborhoods with few job opportunities, but with reliable, accessible, and inexpensive public transportation, these individuals can get all across their city to where the jobs are. So, a good way to evaluate the effectiveness of a public transportation system is by how well it serves the poor. TAC, for example, does a good job of this. The poorest neighborhoods have the greatest proportion of their residents within a 10-minute walk of a metro station, while the richest neighborhoods have the smaller proportion. Hand in hand with their move back into the cities, millennials are shunning the car ownership among young people is at historic lows, and the urban youth is relying more and more on public transport. Some cities like Portland, Kansas City, Detroit, and DC are turning back to streetcars. Done right, streetcars can drive huge increases in economic development. They're more of a symbol of modernization that entices residents, developers, and businesses to areas. Portland, for example, has had an estimated $5 billion in extra economic development thanks to its streetcar. New streetcar systems are being built all across the US in cities like Milwaukee and Oklahoma City, since they're finally making money, not from their fares, but from the jobs brought by their existence. People didn't want them a century ago, but streetcars finally make sense again. Public transportation is instrumentally important to the success of cities. You can almost be sure that a good city will have good public transportation and a bad city will have bad public transportation. Public transportation increases economic mobility, decreases carbon footprints, and increases economic development. So the only question is, why not build more of this?
So, this is not to make any type of specific statement, but just how did we get where we are today in the United States? And so I found this to be very interesting because I didn't know a lot of this. So I don't know. I'm hoping maybe some of you also, I don't know if there's any comments anybody has regarding this. Yes.
I recently moved back here, probably about maybe 7 years ago.
Okay.
Rail system back in downtown, and it was really advantageous to people who were trying to find jobs because they couldn't get there. So they built the rail system to connect with the bus system, so that when you went to a specific stop, you could take the bus the rest of the way, because the buses would not take them as far as they needed to go. So that really enhanced downtown. That's been redeveloping for probably the past 20 years.
Yeah. Good point. I mean, Lorain County is the 9th largest county out of 88. And unfortunately, our transit system only hits our urban centers. It's not even reaching our rural communities. And it can take a long time for somebody from the most southern part of our county to get to a hospital.
Yeah.
And so is that fair? And so that's why we need to look at the entire county and why, having this mobility management program and also using 5310 vehicles to support this effort and our transit system is very important. Yes.
What's a 5310?
We will, actually, Kira's gonna talk about that here pretty soon. She will define all of that.
Hey, Sharon, I
Yes.
just want to say, I had ridden the LCT bus with you, last Friday, and the stops we went or the route we went, I do not see how that will allow Lorain County to increase economic development, because it was going to the mall that there aren't any businesses. So I just think we need to probably also look at where's our transportation system actually going, and how is that meeting the needs of the people that are riding it
Right.
or
so,
that need to.
Thank you. You jumped right ahead.
Okay.
I was gonna say, anybody want to share personal experience about transportation? Because we did invite, we had a couple of people on the bus that we did invite to come to the meeting. Unfortunately, it doesn't look like a lot of any of them showed up. Yeah, because Emily was on the
Yeah.
bus too. Yeah, we were hoping they were gonna show up because we really wanted to hear their experiences.
Was it because they had a problem with transportation?
No, because
Okay.
thanks to Nord, we were gonna provide that and pick them up, and they lived, a lot of them live close by.
Yeah.
Too.
And they seemed enthusiastic. about
Yeah.
Wanting to attend.
Yes, we had a really good time with them. on the
Yes.
bus. All right, so without further ado, let's go ahead and introduce Carly and Kira. I guess Carly. Okay. And they're gonna talk about the mobility management program, which is my position, and then also what 5310 means. So let me get to their presentation real quick. I'm gonna stop. I'm gonna stop.
Well, while she pulls that up, I'm Carly Coe, so I'm the statewide mobility coordinator at ODOT. So like Sharon says, I oversee all of the mobility measures. So we have about 70 counties out of the 88 served by a mobility manager. Sharon is our Lorain County mobility manager. She does a fantastic job. The main goal of these mobility managers is to really find those unmet needs and those gaps in public transportation. So what this meeting is for is to discuss with you, what we need for improving public transportation a lot of times is local match. So local match is something that all key stakeholders, I will say United Way has you guys do great getting your local match, which is fantastic, because a lot of the rural communities in Ohio, getting that 20% local match of the 100% total to provide public transportation is very difficult. Lorain County does great with that. However, it doesn't serve all of the rural communities. And because you guys are what we call a small urban, you guys don't qualify for rural public transportation. So our goal is to get, transportation out into those rural communities, and through the surveys and what Sharon has done, we're figuring out that you guys really are in desperate need of more public transportation. I'll have you go to the next slide.
Okay.
So mobility management, it really starts and ends with the customer. We're going to be surveying those people out in the community. That's going to be the main focus. We want to figure out what they need. We're going to find them the most affordable, the most efficient transportation for them. And unfortunately, we're just not able to meet the needs of everybody. So that is what mobility managers are going to do. They're going to find that right fit solution for customers. And what Kiera does is 5310, the 5310 program, it's enhanced mobility for seniors and people with disabilities. So what that program does is it finds all of the gaps and unmet needs for older adults, for people with disabilities that are not able to ride public transportation. Another good thing about that is if we are meeting all the needs of seniors and people with disabilities, then those buses and that transportation can be used for others. So when I talk about planning for sustainability, that's going out and finding that 20% local match, making sure that we have that infrastructure to maintain the public transportation. We can start public transportation, but if we don't have the funds to manage it, then then really it's not gonna last.
So Carly, one thing, when we say it's public transportation, we don't mean like our transit system. We kind of define public transportation as all things transportation, walking, biking, using other vehicles. It can be Lyft, Uber, I mean, it can,
Cabs,
you know,
yes.
so, yeah, I like to define that because sometimes when we use public transportation, people think our local transit, we're not trying to take over that. We're
Yeah.
trying to work with it.
And I don't know, like, obviously for Medicaid, do you guys go through your JFS?
Yeah,
Or
we work with.
For all Medicaid,
Mhm.
they qualify for public transportation too. So a lot of times, you know, they'll provide vouchers or bus passes, but it's not gonna cover everywhere that someone needs to go, especially in those rural communities. So I'll go ahead and go to the next slide. So these are the main goals of mobility management. So increase the understanding and awareness of community transportation needs, getting out in the community, having these TAC meetings. Increasing awareness of current community transportation options. So like you said, we need better routes. That's one of Sharon's goals, to go out and see, you know, we're going to this mall that no longer has, like you said, any business, which a lot of malls I feel like are in Ohio right now are having that same issue. So it's the thing, I guess, with, you know, not COVID really made Amazon, you know, our main way to buy things. So increasing that local capacity for transportation, and then assist individuals with accessing all community transportation options. So like Sharon said, if your buses or your public transit is only in the urban areas, it's not going to be going out to those rural areas. So we need to figure out another way to get to those areas. And then we're going to go talk about the coordinated plan here later with her goals. And the point of the coordinated transportation plan, like I said, is to find those unmet needs and those gaps in transportation. And what's included in that transportation plan is all the public transit. So 5310 public transit program. They have to be included in that public transportation plan. So that's one thing. After Kiara presents, if anyone's interested in it, you'll have to get with Sharon about making sure that you're included in the public transportation plan. So right now, you guys are still on a local transportation plan. I know NOACA also includes you in theirs, correct?
Yeah,
So-
NOACA does cover our area, but so our coordinated plan covers this area. So providers have the opportunity of applying for funding either under our coordinated plan or under NOACA's coordinated plan.
Yeah.
But it's
And-
better to apply under ours.
Yeah.
We have more money.
We have more money, and that's what we're going to talk about is that extra funds that you guys have in Lorain County that right now isn't being taken advantage of. So we want to make sure that you guys are getting as much as you can for your community. So I'm going to let Kiara go on to talk about the 5310 program and the coordinated planning process.
Alrighty, well, hi, everybody. I'm Kiara Branch. I am the 5310 program coordinator at ODOT. I've been with ODOT a little over 3 years, so close to 4 years now. And I manage the 5310 program. So a few months ago, I actually had a conversation with Sharon about $5310. So the way that it works is that, just a little back history.
Can you explain what 5310, since we have that question? What is 5310?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
So 5310, it has been around for a very long time. The actual professional name I would say for it is Enhanced Mobility for Seniors and Persons with Disabilities. And basically that is just an FTA funded grant program that really meets the needs of seniors and persons with disabilities, and agencies across the state of Ohio in large urban areas, small urban areas, and rural areas can take advantage of that funding that is allocated to ODOT from the federal government. Yeah, no problem.
Does that, well, Jackie, that can't help. Okay.
So I'll talk a little bit about 5310, some of the eligible projects that we have, but I want to give a backstory as to why I'm here. So I had a conversation with Sharon, I would say, I don't know if it was last year.
Yeah, it was.
Okay, yeah, I think it was last year or a few months ago about the 5310 allocation. So what I've noticed in the 5310 program since I've been managing it and then previous program coordinators is that there's all this money in the 5310 program for small urban areas, but it's not being spent down. So throughout my presentation, I'll kind of talk about what those apportionments are and then what money is left on the table. Because at ODOT, we would really like to see agencies coming in, especially in the small urban areas, coming in for that funding and spending that money down. So Sharon, you can advance. Alrighty, so I'm gonna also talk about the eligible recipients because I do get a lot of questions about who's eligible to apply for this funding. So in order to apply for 5310 funding, the first thing that you want to be able to check off your list is that you're either a private nonprofit organization or you're a state or local government that has been approved by the state to coordinate services for seniors and persons with disabilities. So you wouldn't be able to be a private company. I know there are a lot of taxi companies that try to come in for 5310 funding. Unfortunately, they wouldn't be eligible. But if you are categorized as a 501c3, private nonprofit organization, or you have been approved as a public body to provide services for seniors and persons with disabilities, then you are eligible for 5310 funding. And then Carly also talked about the coordinated plan. So I wanted to spend a little bit of time on this particular slide because the coordinated plan is very, very important. When you're coming to these TAC meetings and you're having these conversations, as you know, the 5310 program is designed to meet the needs of seniors and persons with disabilities to really remove those barriers of transportation for that segment population. But in order to know what those barriers are, you have to develop that coordinated plan locally. Right now, ODOT is helping or assisting locals with developing that on a regional level. But the coordinated plan really is to kind of figure out what those unmet needs are. In the 5310 program, as we're seeing what those needs are, we're able to see what projects agencies are applying for and how those projects really fit into removing those barriers of transportation. So in order to receive 5310 funding, not only do you have to be a private nonprofit or a public body that is approved to coordinate these services, but you do have to be involved in that coordinated planning process.
But one thing I wanted to point out is that even if you are a for-profit agency, there is the opportunity, a nonprofit may, and you're going to talk about the
Correct.
funding, may need your services and provide services using some of these funds.
Right. So I'm gonna, thank you for bringing that up. I'm gonna jump forward a little bit because I don't have that piece in the presentation. So I'm gonna actually speak about that now. There is a project through 5310. It's being developed right now. That's why I don't have it in the presentation, but I'll talk about it a little bit. It is our third-party capital cost of contracting project. And so that project really is for agencies that don't have drivers or they don't have vehicles. So they don't have the staff to actually coordinate these services. So they pretty much contract these services out. So for example, we have an agency, Area Agency on Aging, and they have a Find a Ride pilot project. And so they don't have drivers and they don't have vehicles, but they contract with local providers or taxi cab companies in different areas, small, urban, and rural, to provide this transportation for seniors and persons with disabilities. And then ODOT reimburses them for that particular transportation. And we reimburse that at an 80% cost rate.
I mean,
Yeah, you can. Yes. So I also want to talk about some of the other eligible projects within the 5310 program. So vehicles, I know Sharon wanted me to speak about vehicles, computer hardware and software equipment, as well as preventative maintenance, capitalized maintenance for our 5310 funded vehicles, and then operating assistance that some agencies are available or eligible for. I know Victor with El Central, they do have an operating assistant grant through 5310. So vehicles, this usually is a project that I see a lot of 5310s apply for, specifically because they want to provide transportation to seniors and persons with disabilities. Most of the senior centers around the state of Ohio apply. Board of DDs also apply for this particular project. And this is a capital project. So if you apply for a vehicle and you are awarded, ODOT would cover 80% of that cost, and then the agency would just be required to cover 20%. But I want to pause here because I know Carly mentioned local match. In the small urban areas, what we're also seeing is that it's very hard to receive local match for a lot of these projects that are eligible through these different programs. But the awesome thing about 5310 or ODOT in general, Office of Transit, is that we can TDC the money, meaning that it's a total development credit that ODOT could use to fund a project at 100%. Where we would use 80% of that cost, so that would be the federal money, and then we would TDC 20% for the local match. So the agency wouldn't actually have to come out of pocket for that particular cost. So in the small urban areas, as we're kind of looking at the applicants that are coming in and applying, we're looking to see what TDC, what total development credit we have available to cover some of these projects at 100%. So vehicles. So vehicles are to be used for the program related purpose. So you do have to make sure you're using those vehicles for seniors and persons with disabilities. Now, the general public can also take those rides, but you have to make sure as an agency that you haven't met all the objectives of the 5310 program before you can actually utilize those vehicles, in other aspects. And then also too, I know there are some agencies that do not use, their 5310 vehicles consistently. So we do have the option for agencies to transfer them. And Sharon left, so I'm not sure who's going to advance this.
Yep.
The vehicle ordering process. So let's say an agency applies for a 5310 vehicle and you are awarded that project. Again, it's 80-20, meaning that the agency would cover 20% of the cost, but ODOT would really come up with the 80% for that particular vehicle. So if the vehicle costs $100,000, which isn't rare in this current vehicle market, ODOT would cover 80% of that cost, so $80,000, and then the agency would just have to cover that 20%, so $20,000. And we have a vehicle ordering process. So what happens if an agency is awarded a vehicle, ODOT would send out what's called a vehicle cost worksheet. And that vehicle cost worksheet would have the agency's specifications for that particular vehicle, just based on the transportation that you want to provide. And then once that vehicle cost worksheet is back to us, ODOT would review it, make sure that, you know, all of these specifications are listed. We would determine what our percentage is, which is that 80%. And then we would invoice the agency 20%. Of the cost of that particular vehicle. Now, pre-pandemic, when vehicles were being ordered and delivered, it would usually take a vendor 6 months. But of course, post-pandemic and just the vehicle market right now, I'm seeing vehicles be delivered and built within 1 to 2 years. So definitely keep that in mind when you are thinking about applying for a 5310 vehicle. That, you know, once we put in that vehicle order, that really is with the vendor to build that vehicle, to deliver that vehicle, and it's pushing about 1 to 2 years right now. And then we also have available vehicle catalogs. So I get a lot of questions from agencies or applicants when they want to apply for 5310 vehicles. You know, we see these vehicle cost worksheets, but we don't know what these vehicles look like. We don't know what these particular options are. And so ODOT has developed a vehicle catalog, which would allow an agency to determine, you know, if there's an accessible van that they want or a modified minivan, what are all the optional images of equipment. And then we provide this to the particular agency. What I've also been seeing is that when the agency selects their specifications on their vehicle cost worksheet, the vendor will send out a floor plan, which will allow the agency to kind of see what that vehicle will look like when it's actually built and delivered. Sharon, you can. Okay. No, you're fine. And then also too, if you are awarded a vehicle, the only requirement that we really have for our vehicle subrecipients is that you do report on that vehicle or those vehicles semi-annually, so twice a year, because we do have to send these reports to the federal government or FTA to understand, you know, as the agency is utilizing that vehicle, you're reporting on the age, the mileage of the vehicle, how many trips you're taking. So those are some of the things that we look at as well. And then I also want to talk about our capitalized maintenance. We also call it a preventative maintenance project. And this is a project for agencies that do have a Section 5310 funded vehicles. So if you're an agency that has received vehicles from us in the past, we have a capitalized maintenance grant, which would allow agencies to receive an 80% reimbursement on the cost of keeping those vehicles on the road. So as I mentioned, you know, in most cases and what's happening right now is agencies are getting vehicles or they're not getting vehicles for 1 to 2 years. And so you have older vehicles that you receive through our program that you're not able to, you know, take to, I would say, a mechanic because of the cost. Well, ODOT has a grant, or the 5310 program has a grant where ODOT will cover 80% of those costs for the maintenance on that vehicle. So if you get your tires replaced, if you hired a mechanic, we could cover his salary or his or her salary at 80%. And also to just, if you were to get an engine replaced, that's another particular expense that we would also cover. So through this particular project, to keep that particular vehicle on the road for the serviceability and functionality, ODOT would cover the expenses that you have at 80% of the cost. And then we also have equipment that is eligible through 5310 as well. That is another grant or another project that's capital, that's an 80% reimbursement. And most of these projects within this particular grant is computer hardware and software. Most of the agencies do apply for radios. So that's another project that's eligible. And again, once you actually purchase that equipment, ODOT would then reimburse up to 80% of that total project cost. And then this is a project that does have procurement. Now, Jessie Spitzer is our compliance officer, and she's our procurement guru, so I won't go into too much detail about this. But if you do decide to purchase a radio, or you are awarded a radio project or a computer software project, just depending upon that cost of that project would determine which area you fall in. In most cases, what I've been seeing for 5310 is that agencies fall between the micro purchase and small purchase, where you have to get an ICE done, or you have to work with our team to determine what's a fair and reasonable price for that particular project. So just keep that in mind if you do apply for equipment projects, that you will be subject to procurement just based on what the cost of that project is. And then one of our last projects that we have available is our operating assistance through 5310. Now, this is different than our other capital projects because this is reimbursed at 50%. And this particular project is for operating expenses, so your day-to-day operations of your particular program. So if you're hiring drivers and you're paying their salaries, ODOT could reimburse you 50% of that cost. If you're putting fuel in those vehicles, which right now fuel is higher, I've seen a lot of agencies claim their fuel costs through 5310. ODOT will cover that at 50%. But the only thing that we require is that the agency is open door. So if you're, claiming these operating expenses for your particular agency to keep it running for transportation, you would have to be open door, meaning that you would have to provide transportation for seniors and persons with disabilities, regardless of the organization that they may be involved in. So let's say you're an agency that you only provide transportation to and from your specific agency. That wouldn't consider you to be open door, you would actually be closed door. But if you provide transportation just in general to seniors and persons with disabilities, meaning you take them to their non-emergency medical transportation trips, you take them to church, to the grocery store, just daily things that seniors and persons with disabilities do, then you would be considered to be open door.
I have a question.
Yes.
If that program, the 50% reimbursement would allow you to go from closed door to open door, like as part of the services that you offer to the people, is that something that you can do, or does it have to be open door? So like if I'm doing to and from where I'm at right now, but if I got that program, I would be able to fund an open door program?
Mm-hmm. So that would be a conversation we have to have at the time of application, just to determine that you would continue to be open door once we awarded the project.
Yeah, yeah, so, okay.
Yes.
Excuse me, I was just wondering, is that program open to like a private owner operator? So the person could then become an entity and then get the vehicle, and then that's their sole business. Are they able to do that?
Yeah, so you wouldn't be able to be a private provider. You would have to be a nonprofit provider providing that particular service. So you would have to be designated either as a entity that provides services to seniors and persons with disabilities through being a nonprofit, or have that 501c3 status.
Is that, now who made that rule?
So that's an FTA rule. So FTA actually designates ODOT as a designated recipient for the Section 5310 funds through the state of Ohio. So that's an FTA rule, but then also when agencies apply for 5310 funding, we do look through the, because there have been a couple of private providers that have applied. We do look through the Secretary of State's office just to determine what that status is of that particular agency. Harley, did you want to add? No, you covered it. Okay, so this is why I called Sharon last year. So in the 5310 program, as I mentioned, ODOT is the designated recipient for the FTA funds, meaning that every year FTA designates a certain amount for small urban areas that ODOT then disseminates for the small urban areas. And so for federal fiscal year 2020, 2021, and 2022, I took a look at what those apportionments were, what those allocations were that FTA sent to ODOT for us to disseminate. And what I noticed is that, for 2020, the apportionment was a little over 1.4 million. The same was true for 2021. And then FTA increased that apportionment for 2022. What I noticed is that although we have this funding, I'm not seeing a lot of agencies come in for those small urban dollars. I can say specifically for 2022, aside from mobility management, because there is some funding that I do set aside for those agencies. Of this 2 million, a little over 2 million for 5310, just this year, I had approximately, I think, $1 million in requests for funding. So when that happens, there's money that's left on the table. So when I had that conversation with Sharon, I wanted to really talk about the 5310 program, some of the eligible projects that are available for agencies and what you can apply for so that we can begin to spend this funding down. Now, this 2 million here is not eligible at this point in time because we did find projects through the mobility management program that I was able to use to spend down this money. But just keep in mind, this is something that's happening year after year where this money is there, but it's not being spent down. So as you're looking at future 5310 opportunities, you're able to kind of see what those apportionments are. And then the ODOT funding cycle. So as I mentioned, there's money there, but you're probably thinking, well, how do we apply? Well, ODOT right now is changing our application cycle. Our application cycle usually would start in the spring, but we've been having conversations with our subrecipients about changing that to a state fiscal year. We don't have a lot of our dates in place right now because we're having a lot of internal conversations. But I did want to at least mention one date that we do have set that is very important for you to know, which is our letter of intent. So our letter of intent is the first piece in our application. And that really is, we really send that out way before the application to really understand what agencies, want to apply for, what potential funding is available. So our letter of intent will actually be published April 3rd. Yeah, our letter of intent will be published April 3rd. And we really condensed it this year. We really just want to know, your agency's name, contact information, just some basic information about the particular agency, something that you can apply for in 5 minutes. And that'll be published April 1st. That pretty much puts you in the ballpark of, okay, ODOT knows I'm interested in actually applying for ODOT funding. So once you apply for the letter of intent, you submit that and it has been approved, you would then move to the mandatory application workshop. That is mandatory for any agency that wants to apply for 5310 funding, mobility management, or any grant through the Office of Transit. Once you've attended the mandatory application workshop, you'll kind of hear about the application in general, what ODOT would be looking for, what projects are available, and then really what is a successful application is. Once that mandatory application workshop happens, ODOT would then post the actual application. And then we would give the agencies about 5 to 6 weeks to actually apply. And then once those have been submitted, ODOT would then have about 5 to 6 weeks to do our internal review where we sit down as a team and we go over the applications. Once that happens, usually we would send out those award announcements. For any agency that has received or been awarded a vehicle, we would send out the vehicle cost worksheets. Any reporting forms, and then we would also issue those contracts as well. So that's something to keep in mind. I'll make sure I get to Sharon our more updated ODOT funding cycle so that you can kind of see those dates and how that flows.
Yeah. So, if you were to apply this year, it wouldn't start until July 1st of next year because we are in the process of moving to the state fiscal year from the calendar year. So that's just something to keep in mind. So also that letter of intent, if anyone is thinking about possibly applying, I would fill out that letter of intent. It takes 5 minutes. Just because you fill it out doesn't mean you still have to apply. I would still just recommend filling out that letter of intent. Anyone that wants to do that can email Sharon and we can get that to you. It's open for a 2-week period is all. So as soon as you get that, you have 2 weeks to fill that out and send back to us.
Thanks, Ron.
Yep.
So I wanted to talk about project selection. This is more specific to the 5310 program, but not necessarily all of the other projects or programs within the Office of Transit. Because I got a lot of questions, 5310s, they want to apply, but they really want to understand what the process is like. This funding is here. What will the application for 5310 look like? So I do want to say that it is a competitive process, but as I mentioned, That changes a little bit because of the small urban allocation that's still left over. Just because we have the money doesn't mean that we'll throw the money at a bad project. We do still want to see those viable projects in the area, but the funding is there. So although it's competitive, just remember that we do have an allocation that's not always spent down in the future. So just completing those applications and completing those project requirements would be helpful. And then we also have scoring in place as well for 5310. So as I'm looking at projects, I'm really looking to see, one, is the project eligible? Meaning, is it a nonprofit? And then I'm also looking to see if that specific project is involved in a coordinated plan. So if in Lorain County, there are challenges for seniors and persons with disabilities to maybe get to the grocery store on the weekends. I'm looking at projects or hoping to see projects, vehicle projects, or any project that would want to expand transportation on the weekends. That's just an example. It doesn't mean that your agency would have to do that, but that's something that we look at as well. And it is on a point system. So we're taking a look at coordination as well. Is your particular agency, when you're applying for this funding, are you partnering with these different agencies? Are you partnering with the local hospital to provide transportation? Are you coordinating with your transit system? Are you also coordinating with just local providers in the area to provide transportation? So that's something that we take a look at as well. And then we also look at the project holistically. We want to see, is this project really geared towards meeting the needs of seniors and persons with disabilities and removing those barriers of transportation?
I know one of the key points of the scoring is also looking regionally. So are we
Right.
starting to cross county lines, which is something that we really have a challenge with here in Lorain County right now.
And then this also too is our 5310 webpage. So ODOT, I would say about a year ago, ODOT did a revamp or the Office of Transit did a revamp to our office website. And so we updated pretty much our 5310 website and all of our other program websites and web pages. And I actually have this here because I think Sharon will send this out as a PDF so that you can click on this link and be able to see some of the other information about 5310 and then some of the other documents that we have available. And then Sharon, do you mind going back to this one? Okay. I also wanted to talk about the technical assistance review, because when I'm speaking about the 5310 program and you're applying for these projects, I don't want agencies to be surprised that you would have some requirements of federal money. So now you can advance the slide. Okay. Because I do have some agencies, they're like, oh, I didn't know this was required. Okay, so the TAR, if your agency is awarded a project or projects through the 5310 program, there's a possibility that you might be pulled for a TAR, which is a technical assistance review. Now, we pull agencies for a TAR based on a number of factors. How many projects you have, how much funding ODOT has given you in the past, and then also your reporting and if you've hired any new staff. So those are some of the things that we look at. The TAR will cover all of the 5310 awarded projects. So as I mentioned, vehicles are available, operating assistance, preventative maintenance. So if you have all of those particular projects, ODOT is going to pull you for a TAR for those particular projects. Now, what I'd like to tell 5310s is that the TAR is not a gotcha moment, but it really is for ODOT to come out, take a look at your projects, see how you're implementing them, and then also provide you that guidance just to make sure you're still in compliance. Our TAR coordinator and our compliance team will come out, and then I will also come out as well as the 5310 program coordinator, just to make sure that the agency is staying compliant. And that really is on a triannual basis. So let's say you're awarded a project or projects and ODOT pulls you for a TAR, we're going to come out, just make sure the agency is still compliant, and then you're set for the next 3 years. And then after that, we'll just kind of pull agencies randomly as we do, and then we'll set you up for a next TAR. But again, that's on a triennial basis. And then that pretty much is the presentation about 5310. So I wanted to kind of talk about the funding that was available, some of the projects that were eligible, and then I also left my contact information and Carly's as well, just in case you have any questions about 5310. I will say, I'm not going to put Carly on the spot, but one of the biggest things about 5310 is that coordinated plan. If you're not involved in that coordinated plan, the agency would automatically not be eligible for funding. So reaching out to Carly and working with Sharon, coming to the TAC meetings, making sure you're aware and you're involved in that coordinated plan will then move you to the next step to be eligible for 5310.
So, yeah, any questions?
If you don't spend down all the money, do you lose it or does it roll over to the next year?
We roll it over, but FTA does have a requirement, I believe it's 2 years. And after 2 years, the money is considered to be lapsing, meaning that, for example, the $2 million, if I have $1 million left on the table, when small urban projects come in for the next year, I have 1 million that I can use. However, I still have an apportionment for the future years that I still have to draw down as well. So, that 1 million I can use for, let's say, the next year. But if small urbans come in, I have 1 million left, I only get 700,000 requests, I still have 300,000 that now is still lapsing. So that's the problem that we're kind of running into and trying to get agencies to apply. So at the very least, the 2022 money wouldn't lapse until 2024. So I'm hoping between now and July and 2024 of July, I will have projects to come in to spend that money down.
Thank you.
Here is our veterans also have a 5310 program, or is it a different program?
So that would be a different program. We don't have veterans that are eligible for 5310.
Okay.
Yeah, that's
Also-
specifically usually through the VA.
Yeah,
Right,
the VA.
okay, all right, we have to be through a different program.
Yeah.
Just to clarify that part of this training.
Unless they are over the age of
65, yeah.
65.
Mhm. Now, veterans can use the transportation services, so a senior center would come in and they would apply for this 5310 funding. A veteran could be over the age of 65, or they could just be disabled and they can use that transportation.
Okay, another thing with ODOT and because it's seniors and disabled. Is ODOT doing anything about handful of community programs or anything that's a program similar to 5310, or somehow giving businesses the opportunity to have a van pool program, some type of benefits to get workers to work? Okay.
Yeah, so, we are, partnering with a couple of van pools. So Enterprise Commute is one of them. I'm sure that's usually one of the ones most people are most familiar with. But there is also one called Share Mobility that we've been having a lot of discussions with. Share Mobility's main focus is on workforce development. So
And we use that. We did a pilot with Share for a year.
So if anyone isn't familiar with Share Mobility and would like to learn more, Sharon would be a great.
And Commute with Enterprise is already in Lorain County, at Tyson and at Beckett. And they have been pretty successful with that.
You guys advertising that?
If that's one of the projects we plan to work on is advertising, letting companies know about some of these programs that do exist. All right. Well, thank you very much. So I know that there are people here who are not nonprofits, but yes, Victor?
Question. I remember when I applied, it was before the pandemic, and there was a specific requirement about letters of support. And there was very specific about who needed to provide
So
those
we
letters of
removed the
support.
requirement of letters of support.
Excellent. So that was a big issue in this county.
Yeah.
And then I want people to be aware in regards to my experience is with the super excited. We just got our van 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
And super excited. But there was with the vehicle industry, how it is right now, between the time that I submit that grant and its process and everything, it could be a month, but the value can increase. And I want people to understand what is how they need to deal with that. Because we saw that increase in ours, and we were okay, we needed it, and we were looking to find how to cover that cost or change, but it happened with everyone. We just had a grant from your family to do the parking lot, and within 2 months, the increase was like 10,000 more or something. So I want people to understand.
Yeah, so that's a great point. So, Victor is, his agency is a 5310 subrecipient, and they have vehicles and then operating assistance through the 5310 program. And more specifically, what he's referring to is the cost of the vehicle. So with the current climate of vehicles right now, not only are they taking a long time, but vendors have reached out to ODOT when there is a price increase on a particular vehicle. And sometimes that price increase can be substantial. However, what ODOT has done, and one thing that I wanted to mention as well, is with that leftover money, What I have done within the small, specifically the small urban dollars, is I've used that leftover money. That's why I said it wasn't available this year, but I've used that leftover money to build into the grant. Because if there are small urban agencies or rural agencies where these vehicles are increasing in price, unfortunately, what has to happen is if ODOT doesn't have the funding federally to be able to cover that cost, then we do have to request that additional local share from the agency. And sometimes it can be 10 to 15,000. The highest I've seen, scared to say, is about 30,000 on a particular vehicle. So what we've done is we've built that money into the grant to where I think for small urban specifically, I built in the remaining balance of around 200,000. So if there are agencies like Victor's that has a $30,000 increase, or let's say a $10,000 increase, instead of contacting him, the agency, I can just pull that money out of the grant, set that aside and fund that vehicle. That way I don't have to go back to the agency. I don't have to reach out to Victor. I can just pretty much let the vendor know, hey, we can go ahead and cover that price increase, keep that vehicle in production and deliver it to the agency. So that's something that we're doing right now. It has been unfortunate. I've had those conversations with agencies where they've had to cover those increases. Some of them have been as low as $3,500. But like I mentioned, some have been around 30,000. In most cases, there are agencies that do cancel the vehicle if the price increases. However, we do have the option of the agency switching to a cheaper vehicle. So within that vehicle catalog, as I mentioned, there are several vehicles within our procurement that agencies can choose from. Some of those are more cheaper than others. So if an agency at first, was awarded a more expensive vehicle and it got even more expensive, then you can always change that vehicle, or ODOT can pull money off the grant if we have available to just cover the cost.
So I can say that Kira has been wonderful to work with, because she's even alerted me from time to time that there are extra vehicles available from organizations that have closed down. And we've been able to get those vehicles shifted over to nonprofits that are eligible to take those vehicles at no cost to that agency. So that happens from time to time. So if there's organizations that need vehicles that are nonprofit organizations and eligible under this program, you need to let me know, because Kira's going to let me know, and I will let the people know, the organizations know that are telling me, because if you're not in communication with me, I have no idea. So I go to the first organizations that I know, like Neighborhood Alliance is one of the ones that was able to get some vehicles because they told me they needed them. And so they were able to get some of those vehicles.
agency has to be nonprofit. Yeah, the city can go to some
And they have to be, so what Sharon's referring to, if an agency receives a vehicle through 5310, sometimes in most cases that vehicle is new. There have been senior centers that have shut down because of the pandemic, but you can't just get rid of that vehicle. ODOT has to, because we have federal interest that remains in it, we have to figure out, another place or how to basically reuse that vehicle. So I reached out to Sharon because there was an agency in a small urban area that didn't need these vehicles. They shut down. I reached out to Sharon and said, hey, do you know of any small urban agencies that are in need of vehicles? Now, with that being said, the agency does have to be included in the coordinated plan. So that's why I reached out to Sharon first, because she essentially, with all of you, manages that plan, really knows kind of what agencies are in the area, what agencies are eligible to actually receive these vehicles. And then we kind of have that conversation, and she will pretty much put me in the ballpark of who would need that vehicle. Because she's the mobility manager, she's in the area. I'm in central office, so she kind of knows more about what agencies are in need. And we work together to get those vehicles transferred over. So any agency, if that vehicle is new and it hasn't met the requirements for ODOT to remove the lien, we do have to transfer it and repurpose it. Yes.
Sorry, I went to the bathroom. I don't know if I missed this, but so you apply for a van, and then at the same time, are you applying for like the maintenance part of it too, or do they come with warranties? Like, is that available so you get it like it's a new car, like off the lot?
Yeah, so the vehicles do have warranties on them, but if anything happens outside of that warranty, you don't have that capitalized maintenance grant, you would have to cover it locally. So as you're applying for the vehicle, you can apply for preventative maintenance as well.
Okay, so you don't need a vehicle first to apply for it.
You would need a 5310 vehicle first to apply for the capitalized maintenance grant, because it has to be a grant towards your 5310 funded vehicles. It couldn't be it's not a grant for your entire fleet.
Right, so if I'm hoping I get a 53, like I'm asking for one of those, I should also be asking for the maintenance grant at
Correct,
the
yeah,
same time.
mhm,
Okay,
yes,
concurrent.
And you could, for example, Victor applied for an operating assistance project. That project started January 1 of, 2022. And it ended December 31st of 2022. It doesn't mean that Victor did a bad job with that project. It's just that he didn't have the vehicles to be able to operate to spin that project down. So, for example, that doesn't mean we take the project away. So if you apply for a vehicle and capitalized maintenance, you never received it, or you not never received it, but it's taken a long time to get it, we would still hold that capitalized maintenance grant for you. We can extend, or I can extend the period of performance like I did for his agency. And then once you get that vehicle and that maintenance needs to be done, then we can open up that grant again. Okay.
When you talk about a vehicle being built, you know, are you talking about wheelchair accessible vehicles?
Correct, yep. Mhm.
So like a transit van, is it gonna take 1 to 2 years to get?
Well, all
If
vehicles,
it's not wheelchair accessible.
well, it depends. Yeah, it could take a couple months or a year. It all depends on the build of that vehicle. We have within our vehicles contract, we contract with Tesco. We also contract with American Bus, BSI. We contract with these different agencies for vehicles such as LTNs and LTVs, light transit vehicles, or light transit narrow bodies. Those vehicles are really, really hard to come by. They're one of the larger ones. I think it's a 12.2 or 15.3. Those are pushing about 2 to 3 years. So it really just depends on the build of that vehicle. Modified minivans, which is through Braun Corporation, I think, Victor, that was one of the vehicles you have. That vehicle I see right now taking probably about, the earliest I've seen it was 4 months. It's a vehicle that most agencies do request just because they can get it a lot faster. So when you're applying for these vehicles, it all depends. Are you wanting to look at the price of the vehicle? Is that important to your agency? Or actually getting a vehicle, is that more important? So you kind of have to weigh those options.
And any other non-medical transportation vehicles like a pilot or any other minivan, something like that.
But they all have to be ADA accessible. So
Right.
that's the key.
Yeah, they have to score 53
They
ten.
have to be.
So within our program, within
Yes.
this program, I'm not sure how long the other, because Tesco and Ford and all of these other builders and manufacturer companies, they have all types of vehicles that they build. I'm not sure what that time frame is for those particular vehicles, but for our vehicles through the 5310 program, where we work with these vendors, and then pretty much we go out to bid with them and we select which vehicles we want to, for our agencies to have. Those are taking about 1 to 2 years, but they all are accessible ADA.
I didn't realize 50 is all.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Cool, okay, perfect. Yeah, there you go.
Just to go back to your point before the change in cost, I applied for 5310 for my organization, in 21 and 22, and we were awarded both times. The first time, our 20% was 16,000. The one this year was 40,000. Same vendor, same 1,000-pound lift, same everything. So, yeah, it took a lot more to get it approved, but it's still, we have over 400 residents, so we needed multiple transportation. But I personally want to say how much I appreciate you, because the first time I applied for this, what an idiot. I must have emailed this poor woman 4,000 times. I didn't understand, and she never made me feel stupid. She answered everything, and I appreciate that.
Multiply that by 2 because I was doing the same thing.
All right, any other questions? If not, we'll have
No, I
Sarah.
think we have one in the
Oh,
back.
sorry.
Yeah, I was curious if, any part of the program includes, a template or guidance on like the dispatching side of it. So if you get a van and you're unfamiliar with providing the transportation, is there guidance in that regard?
Yeah, so we have our compliance department. So that would really be in the compliance world of things, where I know there are some 5310 agencies that once they get these vehicles, once they get these projects, they request what's called a circuit rider. And so our compliance office will come down to your agency, and they will really work with you on developing the policies and procedures that you need in place to really implement these projects. So yes, we do have that available. It's not specifically in 5310. I would work with the agency, reach out to our compliance office, and then they would work with you on those templates and how to get those policies and procedures implemented.
And our compliance department has different vendors that they would recommend.
Right.
Those vendors would come out and show you how their dispatching software works. And then you could decide based off of that, which one you want to go with.
Okay, thank you.
All right, anything else? If not, we'll have Sarah speak. Now, we were talking about nonprofits that are eligible and government agencies. These next parts are really all about transportation. And so those of you who are for profit, this is where we may need help in your assistance. So, Sarah?
Yeah.
Go ahead. Sarah, you want to say who you are?
Yeah, so I'm Sarah Mason. I'm Lorain County Mobility Management intern. I just started a few months ago, and I've learned a lot about transportation in Lorain County in the last few months. One of the things that we're doing is the rewrite of the coordinated transportation plan, which you guys talked about a lot. Our past coordinated transportation plan was last written in 2018, updated about every year, I'd say.
It's updated, but it's a rewrite every 5.
A rewrite every 5. So we're coming up on our 5 years of rewrite. So I wanted to take a moment. I'm going to be brief. We're going to go over the demographics that have changed within Lorain County in the past 5 years and what we've learned from our last year's survey. So we've done a survey every year since.
Well, we didn't do one in 2019, but we did one since 2018.
So about 2020 is the data that I'm looking at, and I'm pulling that data and analyzing it. So the questions that we've asked go into the goals that we plan now for our rewrite, for our coordinated transportation plan. So first of all, demographic changes in the past 5 years since our last coordinated transportation plan, right? Our total population in Lorain County has increased 2.1%. And that is actually over the average of our state. So we are growing faster than the state of Ohio. The population 65 years or older increased the most. So in the age ranges, 65 years and older have increased the most to an estimated 19.2%. And if we count the 60 years and up, that's even more.
26.3 for anybody that wanted to know.
As a quarter of our population. While the 0 to 4 age population decreased the most, only 5.4%. Now, the population grew slightly more diverse with an increase of the Hispanic and Latino group to 10.8% of our entire county's population, and a decrease in the white group to 77.1%. So we are bringing in more diverse ethnic groups, which is awesome. Total families with income below poverty level, this is households, so that includes individuals as well. With income below poverty level decreased about 0.4% overall. But what was interesting to me was that more individuals for whom the poverty status was determined were living below the 200% of the poverty level. So though we've decreased slightly in our poverty level, it's become more extreme. And finally, the percentage of the population who self-identify as having a disability, and there's a range of options of disabilities, decreased to 0.2%. And the most identified type is still ambulatory difficulty, people who have mobility issues. All right, labor force in Lorain County. So this is actually a 10-year statistic here. So in 2010, our total labor force population, which was persons 16 years of age or older who are capable of working. And that totaled 152,009 persons in our entire county. Now in 2022, we've actually decreased to 150,000. We've lost 2,000 of our workers, but this here shows our employment and our unemployment. So you can see that our employment rate has actually increased, even though we have 2,000 less persons working in our labor force, more of them are employed. And how are these people getting to work? Majority, 77% of the past year, have driven themselves to work, either in their car, their truck, their personal vehicle, but it's a 1 person to 1 car rate. And keep in mind that our average commute in Lorain County to work is about 24 minutes. And then we have our carpoolers that take also a car or truck, but it's more than 1 person per vehicle, and that's 8%. work from home has increased. We went from an 8% in I think it was 2020, so this is 2021 estimate data. We went from 8% to 12% working from home just in the past year. And then 1% each of public transportation, taking taxi cabs, bicycles, or walking just to work. All right, we have one fixed route transportation provider, yay, LCT, and I've had the pleasure of taking the bus twice now, which is an experience that everyone should have. If you've never ridden our public transportation, I encourage you to do so. Annual pass trips on the fixed route was 38,000 this year. This is straight from the website. And the demand response, which they also provide, was 33%. They have a fee schedule, which is affordable to most. And we have riders here that have been using it for years. So it works, it does work. This is their current routes here. And they run they run on really timely loops. So at each stop, you're gonna see a bus every 2 hours. Okay, so jumping right into our 2022 survey, we had 149 respondents for this survey this year, past year. So it gives us somewhat fairly relative accuracy of statistical relevance. The people who responded, so of all 149, we have 92% whose primary language was English. 65% of our respondents had lower income. 70% need to cross to neighboring counties. 55% were able to drive. 44%, that means 44% of our respondents are not able to drive themselves. Those who were aware of available transportation options was 65%. Member of a managed care plan or health insurance, which is important because a lot of these people use those waivers or those vouchers for transportation, and that was 55% of our respondents. Currently use our fixed route transportation was only 30%, and those who have a smartphone was 76%.
And why is that important?
And that the smartphone is important because people are using that to locate transportation, looking up transportation. We often think that maybe the elderly aren't using technology, but this is to show that we really are. And we're going to actually talk about that in another slide.
Can you Apple Pay?
Depends on your transportation option.
Can you Apple Pay?
Get on LCT?
No, it's cash only.
No.
Exact change.
Cash only, exact.
change.
Okay, so our responses of what places do you need transportation for? Our most prevalent one was to medical appointments. And that has been across the board in the past couple of surveys. Medical appointments have been our top priority. To the grocery store, drug stores, visiting friends and family, restaurant, social services, to work, food assistance, religious services, all the way down to court, school, court, and childcare. So you can kind of see where people are headed within the county and without our county. And the purpose of needing a connection across county lines again goes back to where these people are going. Back to the medical. We've got Cleveland Clinic over main campus over in Cuyahoga County. We've got Fairview Hospital where they have the NICU for infants. All of these places are important to people to get to, but they're not able to reach those with some of the transportation options we have to cross those county lines. Other responses, so other down here in purple, we had a lot of people name the airport. Getting to the airport was important. Sports and recreation, and then obviously connecting to other transportation such as the RTA or other public transportation outside of our county. All right, so 27% of the respondents who need transportation, which I think was 78 out of our 149. Of those people, 27% say they need more than 11 rides per month. And according to some of our MCOs and healthcare provider options, they're only getting, what did we say?
15 to 30 one way for the
15 to
year.
30 rides per year. I I thought it was per month. I thought, well, that's not
She
bad.
kept on, you can't be right. And I said, no, that's all they're receiving is per year.
So so these people are offered, rides up to 30 times a year, 30 rides for medical appointments only. So this is something that's restricting these people to stay home. They can't afford, the options that are available to them otherwise. Okay, 75% of respondents say a digital transit map may be more convenient. So 3 out of 4 people that responded to our survey last year said, yeah, I think having an app on my phone would make public transportation easier for me to coordinate with and to find where I'm going to, or to figure out where I need to be at what time. And 37% of respondents say they are not currently transit users, but they would like to see public transportation offered in their area. And I will hand that over to Sharon here. Oh, does anybody have questions? Yes. Yeah, you.
I was just wondering if this data was published anywhere, or if we could get a copy somehow?
Yeah, we're recording everything, so this will go out. Our survey, I can actually put a link to our survey analysis as well, so you can see all of our responses. Most of this, the demographics and things like that, came from the Census Bureau, just straight off their data.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. So we're getting toward the end, believe it or not. So. Let's see, what is the first? Can't remember what the first slide is. Oh, I think we're gonna go over what the current goals in the coordinated transportation plan are, and you'll notice that a lot of these goals really mimic what ODOT wants us to do. It was our first year. A lot of mobility managers across the state of Ohio, they have been a mobility manager or had a mobility manager for many years. Lorain County had their first mobility manager in 2020. So we kind of wanted to make sure that we could make it something aspirational. They're not as specific as we probably will be coming up, but these are we only decided on 5 goals to make it easy, because we have to report on every single item. With this darn report I have to do every quarter. But anyway, so our goal was to increase awareness of transportation options, because in 2018, we found out that half the people who responded to the survey, we had 700 that responded at that time, said they had no idea what their options were in Lorain County. To develop the mobility management program, as I said, it was the first time we had a mobility manager specifically for Lorain County. There is a mobility manager at NOACA, but they cover a 5-county region area, and it's more from a planning standpoint at a 60,000 square foot level, whereas we're boots on the ground here. Explore data collection and planning synergies. How can we begin to work together? Collecting that data through the surveys, and then coordinating educational training programs, both myself getting educated, and what about these drivers that we have all over Lorain County? Can we maybe have some local training here for drivers, so they don't maybe have to go to Columbus or go elsewhere, just to make it easier. And then one of my, and we're gonna talk about this, what are the pilot projects in order for us to learn what works and what doesn't work here in Lorain County? So why is all of this important? Well, American Public Transportation Association says every dollar invested in public transportation actually is $4 in economic activity. This is important. We notice that people want to go to grocery shopping. They want to go shopping. They want to do entertainment. That's all money that's generated. And if these people aren't getting out there in the community, that money isn't being generated in their community. So what have we been able to accomplish? Well, remember, the first one is making people aware. So this is the second edition of our transportation guide. We do have them available. If anybody needs them and wants to pass them out to people, we can do that. We actually finally published it in 2023. We added some new transportation providers to that list because of the new regulations that mobility managers now have to do. We did add both ADA and Title VI information in the book. We used to have tons of inserts in the book. We tried to include more of those in the book. But we always, we're trying to make sure that we include Lorain County Transit map information and then the Medicaid information. and some of the MC of the managed care provider information as well. There is a new database that's going to be coming out called Go Mobility, where people are going to be able to go online, find the services that they need, and that information is going to pop up for that county. So all mobility managers are working with ODOT to get that information provided.
And that
Yes.
goes, oh, sorry.
Jackie.
Shared this with my staff, and they were very grateful to have it all in one guide, for a first time. One of the comments that I thought was useful is they said, if there were little icons next to the ones that are, either Medicare or Medicaid or private pay, they want to be able to tell at a glance,
Okay.
when is their money, when is the customer gonna pay for it? Or when is there a possible way that it's paid, through some kind of benefit?
Okay, we can do that. We can update that and we also have a link to this. And so we can update that in a link that people can have, because we probably won't be updating these again this year,
But the level of engagement was really high. Because this is, I mean, they're working from Post-it notes.
Right.
And word of mouth, and it's really nice to have.
Well, then that sounds like this Go Mobility program is really going to be extremely beneficial, because it is going to give you more of that information specifically about the pay and everything else. So that is coming. We've been working on it for a while. But we're gonna
Yeah, one thing, your guys' transportation guide is the one that I'm sending out to all of the other counties, so this is the first one that is, I mean, it's great, like you said, it's a great transportation guide, so I've been sending it to everybody, so just a heads up. And, the Go High Mobility there, that platform is supposed to go live, the beginning of June, and it does have that option, so it'll ask, ways to pay, and you can choose like a cash or like if you have Medicaid, and you can choose your options, and then it'll come up with the transportation providers for that.
That's beautiful.
Yep.
Thank you.
All right. All right, so workforce transportation, we did, this is an older slide, but between January 1st and September 12th, 985 rides, that is duplicated, because Togus and Avient were operating 3 shifts, 7 days a week. And we were working with Safe and Reliable Life Care in order to provide the transportation. We did extend it through the end of January, so it went for about a year and a month. We were featured in Pulse Magazine. We also moved Lorain County. I worked with that advocacy organization, and we had a presentation at Lorain County Community College talking about all that, and that was a very successful event. We had almost 100 people at that event learning about some of the other options available for workforce. We talked about earlier, commute with enterprise, share mobility, those kind of things. That would happen in May of 2022. One of the things that we really still want to focus on, because we did have to end this program, is how can we continue to put together a packet? That's one of the things that we wanted to work on, John. You talked about that. A packet of information to share with businesses to help them, because we know these businesses are struggling with finding workers. And I don't know, many of you may or may not know that the federal government offers what's called a commuter benefit program that offers up to $300 set aside from a person's paycheck, tax-free, to pay for transportation services. A lot of businesses don't know that. And so, those are some of the things that we want to put in this workforce packet to help educate employers. Trainings. There's a lot of trainings I go to all the time. The Community Transportation Association of America went to that last Louisville, focused on really a lot of technology and microtransit. I did take a passenger assistance training. I learned how to secure a wheelchair in a transit van. And I also attended the travel trainer. Travel trainer is a person who rides the bus and teaches other people on how to use the bus. Now, I've been doing that with a lot of people at nonprofit organizations, helping them understand so that they can educate their clients on how to use transit. Recently, I had my first individual from Lorain Metropolitan Housing Authority who came from Cleveland wanting to know, how do I ride the bus? They needed to get to Walmart. And so both myself and Sarah worked with her individually in order to help her do that. And she was very appreciative of that opportunity. And then I have been going through some introduction to paratransit and also introduction to transit planning, all three thanks to the federal government and through Rutgers and TAC. So some of the future ones there's a mobility management conference coming April 13th and 14th in Knox County, another CTA conference in Oklahoma City, and then there's the Ohio Public Transportation Association conference this fall 2023. That's where I'm getting a lot of this information and my inspiration from technology, and microtransit and on-demand service is what I am hearing the most at these conferences. So one of the other things that I have been doing as part of the training is these monthly ride-alongs that I talked to you about. Amy, and then we have a guest who was on the bus, Sam.
Johnny.
Tell me it was Sam.
I'm sorry. Right with the other guy. I said, okay.
We had a good time talking, yes.
I definitely want to commend, Lorain County Transit, for it's been a blessing really for me, to be able to get around and not having a vehicle, to go different places. It helps a whole lot. I just thank y'all, for the transportation.
Yeah, we have Pam and Tiffany are back there. They're with Lorain County Transit. So, and I appreciate you coming. Oh, Daisy was on the bus that time too. So if anybody else is interested, these are the times. I do them usually the fourth Friday of every month, except for November, December. You're welcome to come with me. State Rep Gail Manning is going to be coming with me sometime in April or May. She's offered to do that and ride the bus with me. So I learn something new every single time I'm on the bus. So it's an eye-opening experience. So the pilot projects, a lot of them have been focused on medical. Before I even started as mobility manager, July of 2019, we started with Nord Center, working with Lyft and using technology system to get people to the appointments. What we learned is the further south you go and the further west you went, or if there was a snowstorm, you had a problem with transportation, using Lyft specifically. Yes.
I think to give you a good explanation as to why that is. Between Lyft and Uber, both of those companies heavily incentivize the drivers to go to
Cleveland. I know.
There's a very small footprint in this county, and as a driver, I'm not coming to this county because I get stuck here and then I have to drive all the way back to Cleveland, and it's just not worth coming out here. So there is a small footprint for people in Lorain and Elyria, but even if you get stuck out in, say, Lorain or Grafton or Wellington, you're gonna have to drive another 30, 40 minutes to get back in town for you another ride. Nobody's gonna want to go out there. And now, this is new within, I'd say probably within the last year, is that we are now able to see how far the pickup is, where we're picking them up and where we're gonna drop them off. So if I see, for example, if I'm in Cleveland and I see something going to Elyria, I'm not coming out here. I'm just gonna say, no, thank you. Because that means I'm gonna waste another 30 minutes coming all the way back to Cleveland, where they're incentivizing me to pay me more to be there, where they don't have those options out here.
Right.
So there are gonna be some tricks with that. And then if you guys, another thing I was thinking about too, is that if you get more busing or better public transportation, that's gonna then reduce the footprint for Lyft and Uber because there's gonna be less demand for them. And so then more people will then merge towards the bigger cities. So,
right. I know that there's a geofence. My husband's an Uber and Lyft driver, and he was incentivized constantly during the pandemic to go to Cleveland. So that's where he was always going.
Okay.
Because it seems, I have found, I think there's even less Lyft and Uber drivers since the pandemic.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, there are for sure. And then there's greater incentives. The only time you'll see anything that's incentivized, because I know there's people that need it here. Because there's times where there's called surge pricing. So
Right.
if there's a larger demand, they're gonna jack up the prices, right? So if there's 10 people trying to get a ride and there's only 2 Uber drivers or 2 Lyft drivers, then the demand goes up, so therefore the price goes up.
Yeah.
And then when that happens, then they incentivize drivers by saying, okay, you're gonna get a bonus if you come to this hot spot. So the hotspot might sit here for a while because people aren't gonna drive from Cleveland out there for $2 extra. They're just gonna stay in their hotspot that's already in Cleveland. Now, if there's people that are already in Lorain or Elyria area, they might head towards that hotspot to try to get their bonus. But in my experience, when I'm out here, those things, they go away so fast.
Yeah.
So there's really no incentive to be out here.
Yeah, and there's, you know, and so that is an issue, and that ends up being a gap and providing an unmet need. But as you said, I mean, I know that there's some transit agencies that are starting to work with Lyft and Uber and being able to close that gap or other.
As a driver, we don't like those. And I'll tell you why. Number one, I've had, like, the hospitals will do that, right? So the hospital will have one person at the hospital and they'll have an Uber or a Lyft account. And then they call the Uber to put somebody that you don't know that's not been background checked or anything into your car. It's not the name on the Uber. And they'll put some crazy person in there and then you gotta go drop them off and bad things sometimes happen. And also, you know, you're not getting a tip on it. So if I see a hospital, I don't like going to those either.
Well, that's good to know. I mean, that's good to know. I mean, that's what this meeting is for, so that we can hear what are some of the issues. So that, I mean, I like the program myself because I could see everything going on along with Nord. We got alerted when there was a problem or the pickup wasn't happening on time. I love the technology piece of this. It was wonderful. And thanks to Nord, we were able to provide that. Also, because of the pandemic, we had money left over. So we were able to use it for the vaccine transportation that we did. We partnered with Lorain County Public Health, Lorain County Transit, and some of our 5310 vehicles, and even one organization that wasn't 5310 Horizon. And we did loops, so like metropolitan housing to get people vaccinated that wanted to be vaccinated. So we had like 65 people that ended up getting vaccinated that otherwise might not have, had we not had this coordination, work with metropolitan housing, had the funding through Nord Family Foundation in order to do this. And the clinics here were kind of unique because they moved all over. I went to a lot of the clinics myself, and we had worked, partnered with Life Care and had called them. So if somebody got stuck at a clinic or somebody wanted to go to clinic and they didn't have transportation, we were able to provide it. We did the senior complex shopping. That was another different type of small grant that we had, where we worked with a senior apartment complex here. Well, we worked with Office on Aging. We work with the senior complex because people were not taking food or helping these seniors in this building because of COVID. So we worked with Lakota Way, and we were only at that time allowed to have 3 people on the bus. They all had to be masked, but we were able to take them to Fligner's and Mark's and Dollar General 3 times a week, and they loved it. Unfortunately, we had to end that program because we ran out of money, but you know, that was a need that we were able to fulfill. And sometimes I still have them calling me to this day, when are you going to start that up again? Then we already talked about the workforce transportation. One of the projects that we've talked with ODOT about is we want to look at providing senior medical transportation in the southern part of our county, south of Overland. We know that there's a great need there, as we heard. Our community, our county is growing older. So that means a lot more people are living as prisoners in their home, not able to get out. And that's a void that we've had for a long time that we really need to fill. So we want to take a look at that and get some money for that to provide that type of service. So this is the end. I want to end with a video. I showed this 5 years ago. I think it resonates still today. This is personally, even though this is not my coordinated plan, this is our coordinated plan. I need everybody's input in this. But this video represents, this is from Denmark. Some of you may have seen this already, about what my dream would be for Lorain County. Because, you know, something, so anyway, let's just watch this, and would love to have your input on it.
Station in Denmark. Is that a bad option? Cutting-edge technology connects drivers to the various ways to get around.
Can you turn the volume up a little?
And everyone there. Macro running.
Denmark is a country with 5 million residents. We are an aging population.
Danish law requires transportation services be provided to all citizens who are disabled and to those needing a ride to the hospital.
Because of the elderly population growing, these kinds of services are in high demand.
In the rural areas, where a large percentage of older Danes reside, cost-effective transportation is a necessity. Fixed bus routes on a regular schedule are far too costly to maintain.
What we've seen in many years in Denmark is there will be bus services in many rural areas. Those services are simply over time too expensive. Bottom line, there was a lot of air in those buses and too few bumps on the seat.
That was actually one of the starting points. How could you make good mobility services in the countryside without making bus routes? It's not about relying on the route that we're going to take you. It's about you as a customer getting the mobility service at the time and at the price and at the quality you need.
One of the reasons to try and see if we could get a more both customer-friendly setup, but also a more economical setup, was to try and demand responsive service out in those regions, giving the customer a better service, but also the peoples, the regions, a better use of their own money. That challenge we tried to solve with Flex Denmark, which has been a tremendous success.
Flex Denmark is an IT company managed by the public transit authorities. It provides demand responsive services to Denmark's 5 regions and municipalities. Here vehicles do not follow a fixed route. Instead, they pick up and drop off riders at the requested address.
Flex Denmark makes sure that the cars are at the right place at the right time and operate in as efficient a manner as possible. Essentially a big algorithm dispatching cars.
These kinds of services are very important in order for elderly people living active lives, being able to take care of themselves for longer parts of their lives. In that sense, elderly people are not different from other people. Flex traffic can also be used by the younger generation. Living in a rural area, kids need to go to football, to the riding school, or come back home late from a friend's house. So it's good for all kinds of people.
Flex Denmark supports competition within the private sector. The platform connects more than 550 private transportation providers into the single integrated system, providing nearly 6 million trips per year.
We do not own any taxis. We tender the whole business. Private operators are doing the operations for us.
The platform accurately calculates these fares and then automatically applies them to various government cost centers for proper payment. Jens Peter Lander and Niels Erbo have been with Flex Denmark since the beginning.
I started together with Niels 20 years ago. We had 5 cars. Nobody believed this coordination between a lot of cars, a lot of payers, a lot of customers using the system was possible. Now we have around 1,700 cars in the country.
While Flex Denmark provides the IT to make the system work, Flex Traffic is the brand name for the 5 services offered. These include Flex Patient, Flex Handicap, Municipality, Flex Route, and Flex Serve. These 5 services use the same vehicles to get riders to a variety of destinations. A customer going to a medical appointment may share a ride with someone going to the gym, to school, or to the heavens.
And it's true that the special day for your choice and drive you where you want to go. It's not a taxi. You can meet some people who go to the hospital, and you can meet some people who go to some medical care. You don't know who you travel with.
It's only about cooperation.
and also about solving problems. That's why Denmark recognizes access to transportation as a critical component of healthcare. For example, Flexstation, funded by the government, connects riders from less populated areas to major hospitals, providing Danish citizens with access to quality care. It is much cheaper to transport people than it is to give them a bed in the hospital.
We have a lot of customers coming into the hospital. These customers, we take them with small vehicles to the bus and drive them to the central hospital in Copenhagen. There's some medical person on board, and then the small bus will bring them right to the
AARP has been looking at the Flex Denmark model because we understand that transportation can be a huge challenge for millions here in the United States. The Danes have been especially successful because they agreed 20 years ago that they would use a common data format to share all of the trip data. It basically creates a very integrated system that opens up a lot more possibilities for convenient service. On a per trip cost, it's really no more than what we're spending here. If we apply this technology, we're going to see a great improvement in what we have to offer here in the US.
It's transportation from your home to home, and that is very important.
It works every day. Lovely way to be transported.
So the reason why, well, first of all, the federal government has really been promoting this. And using this as a model that I think they would really like to see throughout the United States. But the reason why I like it is because you're using private transportation providers as well. Everybody's connected. We're able to get to the rural communities and people aren't having to wait hours to get where they need to go. It's on demand, and they may be sharing rides with other people, which would not necessarily violate HIPAA because you don't know why the other people are on the bus, to be able to get where they need to go. So, but technology is the key for this. Cooperation is the key for this as well. So I think that, oh, wait, we have one other thing. Minty, we need to get your comments. So if you want to take out your phone, go to minty.com and you put in the code 67367526. It's also going to be at the top of the live results. You'll be able to see the answers coming up.
Can I just click on it?
No, it's already open. Oh, it's here. I'll show you. It's right here. It's at the top. If you look at the top. See at the top, 67367526. Oh, yes. It is 67367526. And this is all anonymous. So I don't know who's saying what, but it just helps us with some answers. Okay, well, go ahead and we'll go to the first slide so you can see.
Oh, phone changed.
Just so that you can get used to using this. Are you a morning person or a night person? The other questions are going to be a little bit more thought-provoking. So we have a lot of party people. And you're up here this early. Okay. Looks like night person is winning out. Oh, we have a couple of neither. Okay, 2. All right.
Tired all the time of your news.
Go on to the next.
all the time.
Okay, so we want to know who's in the room. What type of organization do you represent? Is it nonprofit, a business, county, city, general? Are you a public resident? Or is it open? So, whoa, who fits in the room? So a lot of nonprofits are going to be able to probably take advantage of the 5310 program that are in the room today. So that's good. Okay. So where do your clients, and I think you can select multiple, or others, tell you they struggle access to the most? Is it medical, food, grocery, work, social entertainment, family, friends, crossing county lines. Whoa, we're seeing like medical, crossing county line, wow, we're seeing basically everything except for entertainment and social. Which one is winning out?
It's medical.
Medical, which is what we are constantly finding. Medical, fine.
Oops, sorry.
Okay, no, that's right. Okay. Is crossing county lines an issue for your clients? So we're getting mostly yes. This. Some people are not sure, and we're getting a couple of no's. All right. So I think hopefully I might not have fixed this. I didn't fix it. Okay. So this is just an open-ended. Do you have suggestions for focus groups? Because we're going to be doing focus groups and wanting to talk with groups that we should be talking to about this transportation and their needs. Do you have any suggestions, groups that already exist? You know, like we're going to go to LMHA. I think we're going to work with Office on Aging. We're going to go to Lorain County Community College. But is there a specific group that already exists that we should be thinking about? So rural residents, I know that Sarah and I are looking at maybe going to some of the libraries over there and homeless, yes. Okay, so older adults, rural, are the ones, whenever you see the word come up really big, that means a lot of people are saying the same thing. So older adults and rural seem to be, and homeless students. Okay, that's really good. Okay, so I forgot to change this, but the next one is, if crossing county lines is an issue, which counties, and I know which one's gonna come up, but I wanna make sure that we're taking consideration all of the counties that we should be really taking into consideration crossing over into. So right now it looks like definitely Cuyahoga, in Erie. A little bit of Medina. We do have some Summit. Even though Summit is not contiguous, I know that there are a lot of people who need to go there. And
We
so
get a
that's
lot of Medina requests out of our southern office. There's a lot of them go to those medical establishments.
okay. That's good. And so this helps us get at our goals. After everything you've heard today, and I think this is the last one and we'll be done. What ideas you have that came out of today or that you thought about before today, do you have for improving transportation options over the next 5 years? Is that using technology? Is that on demand? Is that, really focusing on the rural communities? Is it medical? Is it, applying, I see, for 5310? Is it biking, walking? Is it more micro transit? Is it just more information out in the community? Is there something we can do as a mobility management program? Let us know. So collaboration, technology, on demand seem to be the ones that most people are saying. So I think that that's it. I think that's the last. So thank you, because we capture all this information, which is really good about if you don't have Mentimeter. No, it's only like $100 and some a year, and I got it from the public health. They used to use it. You guys have to use it all the time, and I told it. But this is a great tool if you want to capture anonymous information. So I want to thank you. I don't know if there's any other questions, but thanks for coming today. We are going to have another meeting where we're going to be presenting some preliminary data from our focus groups and also from the surveys that we have so far. On June 13th, we're going to have it here again at 10 a.m. And we're going to look at having some small group discussions based on the data that we're collecting. you know, we want the same group of people here again. Writers, nonprofits, everybody. If there are people who use the system that you think should be here, please let me know. Your Family Foundation is providing the transportation funding for us to provide transportation. We want to get them here. And we're gonna have food again. So this is our schedule. We also have transportation surveys, so if you want to take some of those with you, we have the transportation guides. So let us know. Thank you very much for coming today.